Hello, buddy. Welcome back to the 10 Man Score channel. I'm your host, Jeffrey 10 Man Taylor. Today, I decided to go ahead and finish off this chapter out of the Bigfoot Terror Tales Volume 1 book titled Ronald Regan vs. Bigfoot. So here we go. Carl had lost his head soon after the initial incident with Greg and Johnny. He had wanted Ronnie and Paul to stay near the window as lookouts and to arm themselves for whatever was coming their way. By the time Carl had built up enough courage to inch his way out of the cabin, the sun was finally gone. The blackness pervading the wooded glen around them. The Bigfoot was nowhere to be seen in the copse of trees and dead grass. But that was expected at such an hour. He could have been anywhere. Behind a tree, beneath a rock. Beneath a rock? I mean, well, yeah, they're strong enough to lift big boulders, probably. I don't know if they'll hide underneath them. Right outside their window. Stepping from the front door, easing his way across the rickety porch, Carl had descended the steps. He looked toward the Bronco next. The keys were in his pocket, and there was no reason he couldn't start the thing up, signal for Ronnie, and be halfway back to the heliport in Bangor by midnight. He had reached into his pocket while Ronnie and Paul stared intentionally from the window. Carl grasped the keys and gave a half grin back toward his delicate assignment, giving the former president a hearty thumbs up. Each cautious step brought him closer to the vehicle, but then it happened. It had been behind the truck, waiting in a crouched position for a bit of meat to come meandering into his path. I forgot they can crouch behind vehicles or slide underneath them to hide. The beast stood upright and walked around the car with a cool, calm, and collected demeanor, as thought he had done this a million times. Ronnie had called to him, "Carl, look out!" But it had been too late. Carl had turned to face the thing and fired his pistol, which sent a bullet flying into the patch of woods beyond the Sasquatch. Crackling into a tree trunk, the beast breathed slowly, rubbing its hands together. Ronnie could no longer see the thing's face, but he had seen enough fights in his day to know it was ticked off and ready for a brawl. Whether Carl was a fitting competitor or not, the beast had craned back on one leg, extending the other leg in a sweeping motion, clobbering the side of Carl's head. The agility of the Bigfoot was dazzling and unexpected. The sound itself had been dreadful. It reminded Ronnie of the husk being snapped off an ear of freshly shucked corn. Carl's head, now removed from his body, had rolled across the gravel driveway, clunking against the clapboards of the cabin. The Bigfoot looked at the window again, and Ronnie was sure the thing was smiling at him. It had grabbed one of the little American flags off the front of the Bronco. With both hands, the monster snapped the flag, to which Ronnie knee-jerked a reply from between his dry lips. "You bastard!" "Oh, yeah, you mess up an American flag, somebody as patriotic as him will get furious." I mean, I would too. Their deadly intruder retreated into the darkness once again, grunting in reverie. Paul cried out, "Did he just karate kick his freaking head off?" Ronnie didn't reply to this. He could only think about the head of his security team. Specifically, he could only think about the head of his security team. And now, in the silence of the cabin, after that grievous moment with Carl's decapitation, Ronnie felt the adrenaline rush through him again. As twigs snapped in the distance, "It's still out there, kid. You hear that one? I've got terrible hearing, but I definitely heard that. He's coming, I think." "I heard it too," the guard groaned. Ronnie looked to his side and saw the gun dancing in the kid's hand like a Mexican jumping bean. "You think that gun's gonna do any good, Mr. President?" he asked, looking at the gun in Ronnie's hands on the verge of tears. "We've got no choice in the matter. Sometimes life calls you into action." Ronnie stood, his back screamed at him for engaging in such a youthful activity. It was no use having a bad back when readying yourself to battle a Sasquatch. Yeah, you gotta be strong in that moment, because if you're weak and cowardly, Bigfoot would sense your fear and grab you and kill you instantly, like that. Sasquatch is in the Denton woods. He rubbed as his lower back and propped the Winchester on his shoulder. "Get away from the window. It's not safe." Paul complied, standing and pulling back into the deep darkness of the cabin's living room. He and Ronnie were only a few feet apart, but could not see each other through the blackness of it all. "Let old Ronnie handle this one," he said, holding the Winchester up against his chest and approaching the front door. "Is that thing even loaded? My daddy always kept a box of bullets with it, and I've always done the same. Never had the need, but need just came knocking at our door. I got one loaded. All I need is one, because I won't have time to get off a second, I reckon." Paul smiled in the darkness. "Please, Mr. President, be careful," Paul said. Ronnie felt bad for the kid more than anything. It was a shame he was such a spineless jellyfish, but that was the way kids were today. No backbone, but lots of worthless opinions and that ridiculous internet. Nudging open the front door, Ronnie stepped out into the exact same path Carl had taken only a half earlier. He hoped to keep his head unlike Carl, but didn't promise himself anything. He vowed to do what he could to see Nancy again, and that was the best he could promise to himself, to her, and to God. Stepping down the creaky steps, Ronnie felt his blood rushing through his veins, his finger firm against the trigger. The Winchester felt lighter than a feather. His arms were thin and tired, as with any 85-year-old man, but his will was all steel, unbreakable. "Come out and let me show you the Regan method of ass kicking." He clenched his teeth and paused, listening for the sounds of breaking twigs or padded footsteps. Nothing. He was only inches from the Bronco now, and suddenly realized a weak point beneath the truck. There was a blind spot. The thing could be beneath the truck, ready to grab his ankle and snap his foot off like beef jerky. How could have he been so It's STU, but it has a dash right next to it, like he was about to say something. Inside the cabin, Paul screamed, a caterwaul of blood and fear, pain, and confusion. "Mr. President, run!" Paul went silent. Ronnie turned on his heels and jolted for Carl's headless body, fishing through his pockets for the keys, but then realized they were still clutched in his hand. "From your cold, dead hands," Ronnie whispered to himself, pulling the jingling keys free. He looked up toward the cabin where the door was wide open. Breathing. He heard breathing from that layer of masked space, from just beyond the blackened door. It was there, looking at him, studying his next move. With his aching hip, he would never make it into the Bronco in time. And if he did, the Sasquatch would have overturned the vehicle or put his fist through the window by the time he had the ignition turned over. He thought of Nancy, of his kids, of the nation he loved so very much, which had given him everything, and he asked for nothing in return. He looked to his left. He saw the American flag broken in two pieces, sitting in the dirt with the light of the moon gracing its red stripes and field of stars. The SOB had to pay. There was no other option. Kneeling, Ronnie took aim of the doorway. He only had one shell loaded, but that was all he needed to end this nightmare. Paul's body, loose like a dummy, came launching from the door, landing with a dull thud in the dead leaves and grass before him, only a few feet away from his feet. It was meant to unnerve him, to disarm his senses. He wouldn't let into those urges. He glanced down at the young man's face for a moment. He could barely make out the face. Most of it was missing. The Bigfoot had ripped it off like a curious 10-year-old did a bloody scab. "I see you, dumbbell," Ronnie said, his voice unwavering. The actor in him took over. He was on the verge of soiling himself, but had to keep up appearances for the chess match of it all. This game was as mental as it was physical. The beast grunted, huffing a steaming plum of breath into the chilled air. "Come out so I can blow your dang head off." That'd be an interesting movie to see Ronald Reagan shooting a Bigfoot's head right off. It grunted again, a single footstep forward, calculating and precise. Ronnie saw the silhouette in the whites of his eyes, but not much else. It encouraged him to take the first shot, and then it would charge into action. The beast knew he was still far enough away that he would, by most odds, miss him completely. He was a weak old man with no chance of getting a clean shot from afar. If it charged, then all Ronnie had to do was wait for the perfect moment and pull the trigger. "Listen up, Mr. Bigfoot. I ended the Cold War. Next to that, you're nothing, partner." He had never done many westerns, but it felt good. That dirty twang dancing off his tongue, it felt macho and effective. But still, it refused to make the first move. "Bang!" Ronnie called out with his voice, offering his best impersonation of firing the first gunshot. It was quite convincing, apparently, because the Bigfoot charged, growling and flailing his hairy arms. It acted as a child would on the verge of a bloody tantrum. He waited for a moment, training the sight on the thing's head. A bloody shot would hurt it, but not kill it. The beast was too massive. It had to be a shot in the head, one shot well placed. "I'm coming, Nancy," he whispered to himself, pulling the trigger. The Bigfoot fell without much fanfare, crunching the leaves. It did not move at first, then lurched for a moment. Again, it lay still. Ronnie felt the car keys in his pocket, which had a miniature light on them. He was certain the shot had landed in its head, but he needed to check just to be sure. Ronnie shined the light on the wound. He was correct. His shot had plugged the monstrosity on the left side of the forehead, right above the eyeball. Yep, that'll do it. It hit the brain tissue and boom, you're dead. It had tunneled directly into the brain, certainly killing it upon impact. The left side of its hideous head was matted with bright red blood, and he couldn't help but laugh. He looked just like Gorby, with the grape jelly stain on his bald dome. He wished he had a camera, but even if he had, there was no time for that. He needed to get home and tell Nancy the story of his brave security Koch, how they had laid down their lives for him. It would make a great opening for his autobiography. And that would, but then, Secret Service would probably tell you to hush that up because don't want to cause panic. Ronnie versus Bigfoot. They'll never believe it. He looked at the thing's yellow fangs, then turned for the Bronco. The engine started on cue, unlike most horror movies he had seen. "No," he whispered to fate, "not getting Ronnie this time." His Bigfoot was dead, no doubt. Good riddance. Dropping the ancient Winchester, he still could not believe she had fired on command. And the box of shells into the passenger seat, he breathed heavily, finally feeling the panic setting in now that the ordeal was done. Survival, that's what they call it, Ronnie. Survival. Throwing the truck into reverse, he watched in the rearview mirror as he eased back against the house, 3-point turning himself back out toward the dirt road. The first couple hundred feet were fine, a smooth ride. He rolled down the window so he could hear the crickets, if only to feel human again. It was then he heard the sound of his tires hissing, losing air, and fast. "No, no, no, no. Come on, Lord. Give me a break here," he pleaded with a God who was not quite listening at the moment. The Bronco came to a halt and Ronnie threw it into park position. He stepped from the door and examined the front tire with the mini flashlight. Flat, slashed, actually. The beast was smarter than he gave him credit for, just like the Ruskies 15 years earlier. He looked at the back tire next. which was more of the same. No chance of using a spare in this case. Mercy, he mumbled. Twigs and branches snapped in the distance, not from one direction either. One to the east, another to the west, and the third to the southwest. Ronnie reached across the seat for his weapon and for his box of shells. It was going to be a long, cold night, and soon enough it would be morning in America. And he planned on being there for that moment, that perfect moment, to raise his pride up the flagpole, to eat a Big Mac for breakfast and wipe some Sasquatch blood from his hands, to be the man that was once elected to the country's most laud office, and not the old codger he had become. Come and get me, you hairy commies. Alright, that's it. Seemed like Ronald Reagan in this book was really written to be more edgy in his old age. But yeah, if Ronald Reagan did face a Bigfoot in real life, people would probably not believe him. He'll probably be just another like fake UFO story type of thing. In other words, nobody would believe him. But anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this book reading video. Don't forget to like, subscribe, turn on those post notifications for more book reading content like this. This has been another successful installment of the Tin Man's Court channel. I'm your host, Jeffrey Tin Man Taylor. I say that's a wrap, and that's day, y'all.